Hello and welcome to Supreme Commander Forge Alliance Forever. Today we are reviewing a replay for Threelegs. He's a long-term patron on Patreon, over a year and a half now, of generous pledges. So let's try and help him improve a bit on the ladder. He's at 878 rating, and against a player that's almost 1100, so this is a tough matchup for him. The map is Emerald Crater, a map which is quite a difficult map to play in general. So let's try and give him some tips, some tools to work with, and explain where perhaps the game went wrong for him. So first thing I would say is, in terms of the opening, I wouldn't build any Tech 1 P-Gens before the hydrocarbon. At most one, perhaps. So in general, you would not make any T1 P-Gens. You'd make a factory, you would make mexes, and you would make the hydrocarbon. If you perhaps wanted to expand quickly to, for example, these mexes, then you may make a factory in one P-Gen and then mexes and then the hydrocarbon. But this build would not be too great. I imagine that what will happen here is there will be some form of stall, and yes, in terms of mass, because the mexes are coming very slow, and probably there will be power overflow after this. So there we can see the mass stall, because this mex is not built and because T1 P-Gens are built. So I mean, if we look, I have the cost up here, 75 mass for 20 power income, 75 mass. A hydrocarbon is 160 mass for 100 power income. So as you can see, it's far more efficient. Two Tech 1 P-Gens are roughly equivalent in mass cost, but also the hydro is very cheap on power, only 800 power. One T1 P-Gen, 750 power. So there's really no comparison between the efficiency of a hydro and a T1 power generator. A hydro is actually, I believe, as efficient as a T3 power generator, which is extremely efficient. I think that's the case, so I might be wrong there. So there we can see, as I predicted, we get a mass stall and we get power overflow. Again, in the opening on this map, one of the reasons the map is so difficult is that there's very few mass extractors nearby. Even these two are relatively far outside the base. And there is no reclaim, really. These trees are not worth much at all. So that's some information on the opening. Now the quick expansion to the sides is quite good. And he's got planned a factory, a radar, and an anti-air, which is fair enough. I might be inclined to build a point defense instead of an anti-air, but this may be a thing about APM, perhaps, that dealing with bombers and things in time is trickier for a lower rated player if they don't have the attention and the reflexes to do it. Then building an anti-air in that expansion is honestly fine, but maybe also building a point defense would be good as well. However, if there's going to be a lot of land spam in this area, then in either area, then perhaps point defense is not necessary. So transport has 3 engineers on board. Going for a transport is a very good approach on this map, and Threelegs is dropping the corners. Now, in general, you want to load up perhaps, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 more engineers on the transport, and you will generally drop to one of these positions to secure, again, what is the largest base. It is essentially another main base spawn. So often you'll walk to the corners, or at least attempt to walk to the corners. There is some lab here that was looking for engineers, but it's found a mechs instead. So, but this drop is okay, but generally you would drop to, for example, drop most of your engineers here, and then on the way back you drop an engineer in the corner, and then you come back to the base and begin dropping elsewhere on the map, and perhaps even to the opposition corner. So we have a Mantis here searching for a unit with a scout, so this is quite good. This is obviously the correct place to attack, and he has found what he's looking for, but the attention is not there. Perhaps with the target priorities mod, this engineer would have died if that tank was set to target. Oh, the anti-air is constructed, but the radar is killed, and so the bomber will actually survive because the range of the anti-air is far greater than its vision, so that's why the radar is important there. So both mechs at the back were killed, so those will have to be replaced very quickly. And the bomber continues getting some kills. We have a factory in this expansion. I think it's very good to get factories here. You really want to get a factory to secure this, and we have a pretty big mass stall, and it's because Threelegs is going for a mass extractor. This would definitely count as a mistake, and so would the idle air factory, so it can't really be afforded at this point. So building it will just damage our unit production. So a Mantis should build every 13 seconds. Actually, that's a Medusa, so that's why that builds so quickly. So I would say at this point there's far too many Medusa being constructed. You want to have mainly tanks. You see, because the map is so open, Medusa are not going to do very much for you in the opening because, well, you can simply run around point defenses if they exist. I mean, for example, how many point defense would you need to defend this position? You would need a PD here and here and here and also at this mech, so you can't really defend a lot of things with point defense. I mean, you can defend these expansions, but even so, this is already having only 3 Mantis and 1 Medusa, and a scout is too many Medusa. So I'd say be careful of that, and also be careful of having an idle air factory. Air can be very powerful, is very powerful on this map. So be careful of this. We've lost our engineer here to one of those annoying mech marines, but in general we're taking the parts of the map that we should take. This raid was far more painful than it ought to be, because even here I would send 2 engineers, 1 engineer to take each mechs, because it's that important to reclaim those mechs as quickly. But the ACU is in the correct position, going to secure this expansion, and we have some units in middle, a factory in middle as well, and also units on this side. And here we can see the power of the stationary formation. It's very efficient for fighting, and overall this is quite good. Now the problem I would see is virtually no air, so you're kind of getting away with these transport moves. Your opponent is not really making much use of air or anything, and your air factory has been idle for a long time. You do have 2 T2 mexes, which is very, very nice, I have to say, but no scouting, so you don't know what your opponent has. You don't know where his armies are, or where his ACU is. Where his ACU is very important. So the scouting is quite weak. I think in general in this map you want to make relatively more air scouts on this map than you would on many others, because you simply cannot cover all of the space with radars. It's not possible. T1 air scouts are the way to do it. So your AC takes this expansion. Just need to grab the mexes, get a factory up quickly, and then you know, get the hydro and secure the position. So this is all good so far. Now we're going to hit into a big power stall because of well, for one, you've realized that the air factory was on paused this time, and now you can't afford to turn it back on, because I mean, before this you were balancing your economy based on the fact that you probably didn't realize that the air factory's on. So now you're like, oh, air factory's off. You probably came back to your base after looking at, for example, the ACU or over in this position where you can see a lot of factories have been queued. So basically you did some base building here. You planned some base building here, and then you came back to your main base and decided, okay, let's do some more base building. And let's turn back on our factory, which has been turned off. So this is where you mess up your eco, but yeah, if you can grab a hydro, that would really solve your problem. So here you could resolve this by, you know, cancelling a factory, getting a hydro, and then maybe getting a PD and more factories if you want more factories. PD in this expansion is, I would say, not a bad idea. So you're gonna try and do a bit of an attack here. It's a very small number of units. With this number of units, I would just head to the corner. Also, it would be very helpful if you could see what was around you. Not sure why that guy has a move order to here, but you could be taking some parts of the middle of the map as well. Sending a couple of units here is no problem, and looks like you are gonna basically try and make some attacks. But again, blind attacks are usually, well, more so than any other attack, will turn into mass donations. So be very wary. This may work sometimes, but largely it will not work, and I think we're about to see it not work here. Don't scout with tanks generally, and that's a mass donation to your opponent. One air scout and you would see that there's PD here, and then you just leave your units here, and then does your enemy have enough units to take this? Probably not. He has plenty to defend this position though, so now he defends without you basically hand him an advantage. Also, this dark grey dot means that there's T2, which again, bit of scouting. I mean, you really need to scout this. You have to understand what's going on, because you could get sniped at any point. It's 13 minutes. He could have how many gunships does he even need to kill you? 5? 6? He could probably kill you with that many. One Janus as well comes in, and it's just, you know, it's just game over. Game's over, even though you have a great amount of map control. So we have T2 land. So generally T2 air is favored on this map first rather than T2 land, because it's a huge map, and so air is very powerful because it moves so quickly. This by the way, this expansion was never reclaimed fully, so you still have 2 of the 3 mexes because of a single mech marine early on in the game. So that's a bit of a problem, but really right now is you have to scout right now. Like, so let's see. Well, here we go. Finally the scouts are coming. So now the key is, how will you react to what you see? Because, well, I don't know what you're going to see either, except for this T2 land. Oh, there's a bit of a drop here. Radar you need some radar in middle. Also, T2 radar should be a priority in various positions. There's a drop coming. There's units coming, and The enemy is counterattacking. Also, our economy is growing a lot, which is... Okay, there's the scout. We see T2 land in the middle. See 2 T2 mexes in the main base. 2 T2 mexes in mid as well. So you have to be... So what does your opponent have? I mean, you don't see any air factories. Wait, does your opponent must have some air? Well, he does have air because there's a transport, but yeah. So you didn't really scout his base fully because you missed like all the air factories. So he could easily have had a T2 air factory. This could be a T2 air factory. You would not know because you can't see it. You can actually see the decals on the ground. Maybe that's just me. So at the moment what we've done is make a lot of economy. It looks like you're retaking this expansion, which is good. You've made T2 land. You've made many support factories. So not as I said, T2 land is not usually favored. Now, not only have you made T2 land, you've also made a lot of support factories. So this is very suspect decision, in my opinion. The problem is you have a T2 land factory, right? Fair enough. You're making T2 pigeons. That's good. You're making eco. That's fine. Number one problem is lack of intel. So for example, okay, you're making T2 radar there. That's good. That's going to help you a lot. But yeah, this attack has gotten through and you're going to lose this whole expansion once again. As I said, a PD would probably have stopped this attack, or at least gotten many kills on the tanks before going down. Making 3 support factories in your main base is a problem because you are going to want a support factory here, and actually you're making 3 in this expansion. Okay, so now we're up to 7 T2 land factories, and you're making one here, as you should. That's going to be 8 T2 land factories. Okay, I mean, that's a huge investment in T2 land. A huge investment. So first off, are you going to be able to afford that? The answer is really no. If you want to make other things at the same time, I mean, this is -8. -8 times 8 is -64, if I'm not completely wrong. So let's see. That doesn't leave much room for anything else to be constructed. And also you're losing some mexes. So this position now, oh, the factory just barely dies, and this mex just barely survives. So this will have to be retaken, and let's see. So you could have taken the middle. You definitely could have taken the middle mexes, and now you move out on the left side with a big army, a big T1 army, and we're losing some mexes here. And the rhinos move out with no intel, so they don't know where the army is. They don't have land scouts with them. I would advise, if you mix in some land scouts with your rhinos, that's going to be quite helpful. This Medusa is very nice, I gotta say. So we lose 1 rhino to T1 units because, again, no intel. So we run into the middle of them, and there's still other T1 units around doing some damage to us. But you're running over the expansion, and we hit a huge mass stall. So somehow we're stalling 90 mass suddenly. Let's see. You've made 2 more mexes, and you're upgrading 2 more here. So you're really making a ton of eco, and at the same time a ton of production. Ton of T2 land production. I mean, you can't do both of these things. If you wanted to make this much eco, you probably have to make no support factories in your main base, No, maybe one support factory outside the main base. But actually you're making a T3 mechs here, and I don't know if this was by accident or if this was on purpose. I'm guessing it's by accident. If it was on purpose, then it's it's a huge error. If that's on purpose, if it's by mistake, then yeah, it's still obviously an error, but it's a different kind of error. A more understandable error. So, okay. So the over ecoing is extreme at this point. So you can't, you know, eco so heavily and then also invest in all of this production because, well, only one of these things is possible to do at once. Now you run over this expansion, which is great, but also, where are the enemy units? They're not here, and the intel, still you have no idea what's happening on the map. You know that you have this expansion, and you have your main base, and maybe you're lacking this, but overall you have superior map control. Okay, so that's good. Next thing is you have what, 5 T2 mexes. Opponent has 5 that you can see. These could be T2, these could be T2, you don't know. So that's a problem. The thing is, you need to know what your opponent has in terms of economy, otherwise you don't know if you're over ecoing or if you're investing enough in units. So this you can see the power of T1 land is quite extreme. So you have rhinos and things, but the T1 land is still doing damage. T1 bombers are doing damage, and you will clean up the T1 land here, but only after it kills some stuff, and same thing with the T1 air. Now here you go idle, I guess. Here I would just, it's better if you're not going to give more than one order to just attack, move, or patrol. If you're only giving one order, don't give a move order, because your stuff will go idle, and now the bombers are going to continue bombing you. And yeah, this 35% T3 mechs is killing you at this point, because all this production is wasted, and there's a lot of production wasted, and these factories are even idle. So if they were, imagine if they were turned on, we'd be at minus 100 mass, and now there's an attack that we could never see coming towards this base here. And we've taken a lot of raids in the meantime, so this has been a really bad minute. So this is where the game, where a lot of the advantages you had are now gone. So, and it's because, well, I'm gonna blame this mechs largely. It's at 40%, and plus all of the T2 mechs in this expansion. I mean, this would be fine without the 40% T3 mechs, but yeah, now you've lost 3, 6, 8 mexes here, which is 16 mass per tick, which is like almost what you get from upgrading this mex from T2 to T3. To put it in context, and now we've killed this expansion, which is good. This Medusa, by the way, is an absolute god. Look, one Medusa can do the job of 50 mantis here. So now you move into the main base. Now this is not appropriate. Once again, no scouting ahead of your attacks. If you want to make better attacks and defend better, then you have to use air scouts. You have to scout. Think, okay, where am I going to send this army? Let's say first you have an army here. You scout ahead. You get the idea. Maybe I can use this army to kill this expansion, and perhaps this expansion. So we send an air scout from the base, and we go move here and move here, and then we go and we do whatever over here, and then we look up again and we see the scout fly over here, and we see, okay, there's a PD in 10 units, so we can run over this. And then the air scout flies over here, and you see the Medusa has killed almost everything, so we can send a few more units in that direction. And then we stop here, and we don't go to the main base. And then, you know, once we've killed this expansion, and we knew that we could kill it before we even tried to kill it. That's the thing, you know, Sun Tzu, you've only fight the battles that you're going to win. So first thing is knowing whether you're going to win or not, and then you decide whether you're going to fight. So here we just run into the main base. Now in general, it's not possible to run into somebody's main base with some T1 units. Okay? And if you get the idea, then you have to double check, you have to scout the main base, because most of the time it's going to fail as an attack. So now these factories are Cybran, they have very low HP, and we have no units because they're in the main base dying. And these factories were idle. Now if these factories weren't idle, there may not even, I mean, there may be 1 or 2 rhinos out there because of the mass stall. So it's unknown whether this base would die or not if the factories were turned on. Now the factories are turned on. That factory dies with a rhino in it. This factory dies, and this factory dies with a rhino in it. And this expansion is dead now. And now we have lots of scouts. We have lots of air scouts, but it's the wrong time for air scouts. The time for air scouts has passed. So there's actually some units still in the base here, but overall they do essentially no damage. Killing some PDs is not damage in my view, because the PDs did their job essentially. And that's mass donated to the opponent. The mass in this position is also not going to be yours, and this expansion is now dead. A single gunship will die quickly to T1 anti-air. Okay, and now we've gone from a position of, you know, complete security, where you have both major expansions, you have some position in middle, you have economy, you had these expansions, you had no damage on, you had most of this part of the map, barring some bits in middle, but again, your opponent didn't have those either, so you were in a fantastic position. And then, well, you got greedy. You tried to do too much at once, so we tried to... So this is the part where the game has already gone the wrong way, so we need to take a step back. So rather than try and win from here, we need to maintain the advantage we had before this. So you invested in T2 land, and then a huge amount of T2 land production in the main base. As I said, T2 air is usually favored. I would say making T2 land is fine, but don't make 7 or 8 support factories. Have a support factory here, that's fine. You want to get some flak for your ACU. Support factory here, sure, you want to make some rhinos and flak and stuff. And, you know, 1 HQ in the base is fine, because, like, these rhinos, they're slow. They're going to take a very long time to get anywhere useful. So it's better to have, you know, 1 factory in home. And then you can, you know, reinforce middle, because that's the closest. And perhaps make some flak and things if you need. And then, you know, I would say focus on air. And if you want to make a lot of eco, then you need to be scouting. Now, another thing, if you want to make a lot of eco and you want to move up the tech level, you can't afford to suicide your T1 army. So here, you had no radar here, by the way, for most of the whole game, in fact. So you didn't see the attack until it was within vision range, basically. So you sent your army away. It did good work here, but then it was sent further on and killed the base. And because you sent your army here, you lost this expansion, there's no... It's obviously not worth it. And again, without scouting, the attack was ultimately doomed to fail. And attacking the main base in general is something that you should be extremely wary of. Especially on a map so large, so... There is something called Defender's Advantage. Basically, in the time... Defender's Advantage says that in the time it takes, for example... These rhinos are a perfect example. In the time it takes for these 9 rhinos to walk across the map, 9 pillars could be built. Plus whatever units the enemy already has. So you build 9 units here, your opponent builds 9 units here, right? Let's say they're the same cost and the same strength. You then walk across to here. In all of that time, he's just building more units, and so he will win the battle every single time. That's what Defender's Advantage is. So in this case, you didn't even go to this position. You sent the units through all the way to the main base. So again, Defender's Advantage is huge. The bigger the map, the bigger Defender's Advantage, because there's more time needed to get across the map. So that's why attacking the main base usually is a very bad idea, because that's also where most of their production will be. Now on this map, yeah, I mean, there's also, you know, it's not just about producing units, it's also about producing point defense and other things. So even if they don't have most of their production there, they can still have a Defender's Advantage in those terms. So we're again stalling massively because, well, we're trying to still do everything. So let's deal with another thing. So we're going to assume that the T3 mix was accidental. Okay. First thing, I don't like the whole upgrading things and then pausing them. Like, if it leads to mistakenly upgrading a T3 mix, then it's very, very bad. I don't like it at all. I don't think it's a good way to approach, you know, saving APM or something like that. I think if it leads to accidental T3 mix, if this happens, I don't know if it happens regularly, but if it does happen, you know, once every 20 games, once every 30 games, it's not worth it to me. Because the accidental T3 mix is way too expensive. Look at this, 4,000. Wait, oh no, that's because that's paused. I can't even see the cost, but yeah, it's 4,800 mass anyway, just so you know. That's, you know, he only has, that's 10% of your mass nearly in the entire game. So I don't like this, but if that's what you're doing, then that's fine, but you have to be very, very careful and not accidentally upgrade T3 Max. So let's deal with the fact that you have started upgrading it and you got it to like 40%. Now you're trying to finish it off. You're at 60%. You're at 2/3, right? You should, in my opinion, pause all land production. Stop doing this. Stop doing this. Don't build a power generator. You have power. Don't build any more land units. Don't build this mass storage. Don't build anything if you can avoid it. If you absolutely need something, then build it. But otherwise, pause everything and get the T3 mix finished and then turn everything back on. That's what I would say to you. Also, the speed with which you regain these T1 mexes is far too slow. Those, like, these 8 mexes have been dead for, probably feels like a lot longer because they've been paused for so long, but still they're not being retaken at any reasonable speed, so those have to be made much more of a priority. In general, raids seem to be more brutal at the lower level, not because of any reason other than players don't rebuild their mexes fast enough. So, yeah, so now we're gonna, you know, power through. We're making land units very slowly. We're also it's gonna take us far too long to finish the T3 mechs. So that's why I would say pause everything and just get the T3 mechs finished. If you're gonna power through, which you should, if you get the mechs to 40%, you usually, not all the time, but usually you should just, you know, I guess, finish it. This air scout is killing a lot of, or airplane is killing a lot of scouts there. This Medusa is such a hero. But yeah, another thing to note that, well, this is one of the reasons why this map is so difficult, because of its size and because of its, you know, you can't, it's difficult to see everything that's happening. T2 air for our opponent, and yeah, Threelegs continues, you know, just making more and more eco. Another thing to say is, after you finish a T3 mechs like this, which is, as we said, well, I'll assume is not intended, just stop ecoing for a while. You know, you made a huge investment, so just, you know, relax on the eco. Recognize what level of investment you've made. So if you've made a T3 mechs, that's a huge investment. So just recognize that, okay, well, that's like upgrading 5 T2 mechs at once or whatever. So let's just not make more economy. And mass storage is economy. 4 of these is roughly equivalent to, oh my. Okay, is this another accidental T3 mechs? Because that's 20% of a T3 mechs there. So it might be time, if that's accidental, I would strongly suggest removing whatever mod is doing this whole upgrade and pause thing, because, like, this already cost you these mechs, not really these ones, but it cost you this whole expansion as well for this T3 mechs, and now you've made 20% of another one. This whatever this is not helping you, it's damaging your gameplay if those are accidental, which they are, because you don't stop at 20% if it's not accidental. So now you're going to lose this expansion, and you still are being denied these mass extractors, sorry. And yeah, you're making T3 air. So I'm not sure about T3 air here. The problem I see is again scouting. You don't really, I mean, you have so much economy now that you should focus on, in my opinion, making land units to reclaim the parts of your base that you should have. So you're investing in something when really you could make a much simpler investment, a much cheaper investment, and just take parts of the map that you should have. So if you just make some land, even T2 land, and maybe even T3 land, which would be a quicker investment. Like T3 air is, you know, more expensive because you also need a T3 PGen. With T3 land, you could just upgrade the factory and start building bricks or loyalists. But you can also just keep building T2 land and retake this and retake this and retake middle and maybe fight for this as well. So, but instead you're making T3 air. That's it's very dangerous because it's similar to T3 mechs in terms of it being a longer term investment, and now there's a creepy number of radar blips heading towards your main base here. I'm really scared that more accidental T3 mechs will be built, but they're not. This, not sure what this attack is for. Once again, without radar, you can't really do this. You could have definitely sent attacks to this position. It's very easy to attack this position from the sides. So like, I mean, this Medusa could have gotten more kills, but it's already done amazing work. But you could have killed this for sure. You could have sent, you know, this number of units. That's a small investment, less than 1,000 mass. You can just send it over there, take out this expansion for sure. Okay, now what are you doing? You're queuing a T3P gen. Okay, your first instinct. Let me tell you what your instinct should be here. Your instinct has to be to figure out what units are in this army. You have to know this. You can't say, okay, well, oh, there's stuff here. Your first instinct has to be just fly some units over it to know what's here. Because if that's all pillars, then you are in a bad way. Now you have plenty of rhinos here, so it should be okay. There is actually a lot of pillars there. But, my god. Oh, is there energy storage? There must have been energy storage there. I assume. But that's a T2 mech's dead now. And here you should make T1 PD. If stuff is already this close, T2 PD is not useful. T1 PD has much higher damage per mass. But anyway, you have, you know, well, you lost whatever was in that transport, a couple of engineers. But yeah, this, you know, it's a mass donation, so that's okay for you. You just need to make sure you accept the mass donation and get the reclaim. You have a lack of engineers in the base, by the way, because all of your factories are T2. I mean, you have a lot of T2 engineers, I guess, but T1 are nice too. Janus are coming in. And yeah, you're trying to build a strat bomber at this moment. You should have not gone for a strat bomber because you can't afford it. You really... I think you're trying to do a bit too much. So going T3 air is trying to do too much instead of just simply, you know, do the simple thing, which is retake parts of the map that you can retake, you know. You're not in a desperate position. You just need more stuff, and instead you're making very... oh my god. You're just making very long-term investments. And now the strat is built, and look, it immediately dies. There is no need to go for a strat there. Making a strat like that is a desperation play, you know? And there's no reason for you to actually be desperate here. You should just make the T3P gen. Don't make any T3 air while you're making the T3P gen, right? So get the NG out, get the T3P gen going with all of your build power around here, and maybe one engineer gets the reclaim. And then once it's done, then you just make some ASF. Dominate air, and then you can make, you know, gunship. Gunship is a much simpler unit to use, and you can just, you know, assist the gunship, and the gunship goes and kills this expansion, or kills the back expansion, or kills his army, and it's all very simple. But now an army has appeared in front of your base, and you're going to lose 2 P-Gens here, and they're going to kill units around them as well. T3 mechs is under attack. You've lost the storage. Janus coming in, and now it's just... wow, this is very messy. T3 Gen is finished, and what you need is PDs. The radar has died. This P-Gen will die soon, I assume, but well, the rhinos defend. Now there's no radar. That's a good PD. But yeah, you've lost. That was a very, very, very painful attack. T3 Mex goes down. Are you making that other T3 Mex? No. And you're making more power over here, which you don't really need. This attack actually worked, by the way. You could certainly have, you know. So yeah, at this point, it's like things have... the game gets more and more overwhelming, and you forget to do the basic stuff. But the main issue right now that makes it overwhelming is there's so many attacks coming in, and you never have any idea that they're coming. So if you had this base, then it's unlikely your main base would be under attack right now. If you had radar, if you had T2, I don't think that was T2, but it's dead now, so that has to be replaced. More Janus coming in. But really, these attacks are not that efficient. I mean, killing the T3 mechs was painful, but in general, these attacks aren't that efficient, and you really need to stop making strats and make some ASF instead. And, like, to be honest, you're still winning the game, for sure. Because this expansion is dead, he still hasn't got this, he hasn't got this. He hasn't got T3 mechs, which you do have a T3 mechs. Now, of course, it hurt you massively to make it, but now that you do have it, and he doesn't, and you're in this position, it's good for you. Making strats, not making ASF, you have to be able to protect your investments. So making a strat is really not a good idea at all, in my opinion. That's a big mistake from you. Okay, so now you can see what your opponent has. Multiple T2 air HQs. He's making a lot of Janus. All you need is ASF. That's it. You can just make ASF. You should assist with many engineers and just build. And then I would say, I mean, here's a simple plan. First off, make rhinos. Just make rhinos out of these support factories. Make ASF out of the air factory. Out of the T2 factory here, you can make Corsairs or gunships. And yeah, instead of these two strats, if you just had ASF, you'd be doing well. You can kill this with a single move order. There's nothing here. You just send those units and they're dead. Walk an engineer to the mexes that aren't built. Even this guy can go over here and build those. And yeah, then you can go T3 land here. I think T3 land is fine. You have rhinos in your base to defend you for now. And if you have ASF, then you're safe from air. And the game is, you know, everything is secure then. Just try and, when you're in a position where you have a big eco lead, you're trying to eliminate your opponent's threats one by one. So, for example, he has a lot of land somewhere. Presume. Oh, TMLs. So there's your dead radar. Does he have? Where's? Well, let's see how much land he does have actually. Oh Jesus. Okay. Well, yeah, you have literally no idea that he has all of those units and that they're actually coming for your ACU. Doesn't. Yeah. Oh god. And your Cybern PDs are shooting the ground, of course, because that's just how Cybern is. And that's just how this map is as well. This is a raised platform. Okay, I guess you're about to die then. Now, it does look like you're about to die, for sure. However, if you imagine you had air, you could actually, if you had just ASF, you could probably, and you saw this coming, you could probably airlift yourself out. And actually you're trying to do that now, but it's not going to work. It's too late at this point. But, damn. Well, that's a sad way for it to end. Oh, TML's flying in. After the shield gen. But yeah, you're just doomed here. Okay. Well, wait, did you make... Yeah, so... Obviously, first major issue, in my opinion, is the T3 mechs. With all of the T2 land production costing you this whole expansion. And then all the damage that was taken was really never recovered from. This base was never retaken. This base is only being retaken now, long after this mechs is not rebuilt. This base was obviously never retaken. Then we had a big lack of intel. And, well, a lack of production in this, really just a lack of intel. You really had no idea what the opponent was doing for most of the game, and there's blind attacks coming in after you. Now you've made another T3 mechs, so you're just making kind of the wrong investments. You're making the wrong investments because you don't know what the opponent is doing. So if you know that there's a huge army here, I mean, probably the first thing you do is leave with the commander. And then the next thing you do is build a load of T1 PDs and to help your T2 PDs out. And hopefully you can keep that base. And even if you don't keep the base, guess what? You're still winning. If you don't die here, but you lose this whole base, you should still win the game. Because, again, now you have 2 T3 mexes, you have T3 air. And although you've not used it well because you've made strap bombers, if you just make some ASF, then you can probably kill most of the map with T3 gunships, and you can continue ecoing, and you can make T3 land as well, and you're fine. So if the AC wasn't here and you don't die here, then to be honest, you're still winning the game, even after losing that base, probably, because it shouldn't be difficult to retake these expansions. You should be, they're there for the taking. As you can see, a lot of them are empty. This one was empty for the entire game. This one's been empty since it died. This one's been empty since it died. So, rebuilding mexes, the core principle of that people at the lower levels don't seem to put enough emphasis on, I would say, for sure. And then overall, it's like managing the game as it gets later on. I mean, you got a really good position, but managing the game as it goes later on depends on knowing what the opponent has at their disposal. And if you don't know that, you can't manage the game. So, you know, at some point when you have, like, say when you're sitting there and you have this base and this base, and you have all the map control that you want, you have all of this, and you have this and this and this, then it's time to get the scouts out, take a deep breath, and think, can I afford a T3 mix? Can I afford 8 support factories? Is there any point in sending 70 units into the main base? Just when you feel like you're in a good position, just slow down for a second. Don't do anything. Because here's the thing. If you're already in a good position, usually you will mess it up by doing something dumb. If you don't do anything for 20 seconds, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, your units are still here defending your base. Oh, your ACU is still here upgrading a max or something. It's like you can afford 15-20 seconds to just stop and think. You can. And if you don't do that, then, well, you're going to rashly make some bad decisions, and those will cost you the game. For example, the suicide of an entire army into the main base, leaving this expansion undefended. So not only do you lose this expansion, but you donate mass. So yeah, when, you know, at certain points, the critical points, when there's decisions to be made, you need to take a step back, check out what the opponent has, make sure you have good intel, and then you'll make better decisions. So hopefully some of what I said is useful. There's also a mad amount of T2 engineers. I don't think you need the switch build power, but whatever. It's not exactly important. Yeah, so hopefully this helped you in some way. I think overall you had a very good start and you were in a winning position, but there were a few key mistakes and definitely some over-ecoing and things. So again, thanks for being a patron over such a long period of time, and Send me more replays whenever you want, and hopefully other people got something from this as well. And that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.